Watch this. Coach Sun settles the backhand tier debate once and for all, revealing the one method that actually works at the national level. All right, now we're moving into the advanced stage of the backhand drive, building on the same framework you already know. If you've completed the first and second stages and learned the basic backhand drive, this advanced training is extremely important. All you need to do is take your existing framework and add friction, and you can incorporate the rip element into your stroke. So how do we add this friction? There are so many conflicting methods out there, ripping left to right, back to front. Using the wrist different ways, it gets overwhelming. What I'm going to do is give you one clear, correct direction to follow. The backhand drive pushes forward and flicks right. The rightward motion adds stability, while the push receives the ball first. Now for friction, we simply add it into the same motion. Start with the backswing. Here's a common mistake many players make. They actively move the hand to rip first, initiating with the wrist rather than the body. They ignore the body and just flick the hand like this, a very common bad habit you must avoid. From that first step, you're already wrong. So what's the correct backswing? Think about the forehand friction requires distance, space to generate active contact. How do we create that distance? Same principle as always. Everything starts with the body. Why not use the hand to generate friction? Sure, it works in fixed point drills, but once you enter real match play, the disconnect shows. If the ball goes slightly off position and you reach with your hand, you might save one or two, but you can't sustain it through an entire match. That's why we use the body to backswing. Because when I use my body to backswing, if the ball shifts slightly, one body adjustment gets me in position. Your hand carries no extra pressure, and without pressure, your form won't break down. Remember, at the moment of contact, your hand must stay relaxed and stable. Don't reach and swing simultaneously. Use your body to find the contact point. That's the foundation. This is why we backswing with the body. Before, people would pull the hand back to rip fine for fixed drills. Another approach says twist the wrist. Let me show you directly. Feed two quick ones. See, when you twist the wrist too much, your transition speed can't keep up and your stability suffers. Yes, the backhand uses wrist and finger friction, but you shouldn't exaggerate it. Don't twist in and flip out, and don't exaggerate finger grip on the blade. How should the wrist work? Simple. Imagine a string attached to your middle finger pulling it. During friction, your wrist hangs relaxed and stays fixed. Only a hanging wrist stays stable. With inverted rubber to generate friction, keep the wrist hanging and push forward. Pull that arc forward and to the right, drag the string over. In slow motion, you'll see my wrist has a small, compact snap at the end. The wrist generates clever force, but it's not raw power. Use that small portion with concentration, that's enough. The bigger you swing the wrist, the less force actually transfers to the ball. You can't transfer wrist power and spin to the ball that way. Watch, if I flip the wrist wide open, the force scatters completely. Feed me one. See? Very scattered. Now watch with my forearm and wrist relatively fixed. At the moment of friction, there's a braking action. Look at the racket head, you can see a small vibration. That vibration is the wrist force transferring, then stopping. The range is only 2 to 3 centimeters. Just go forward to meet it, feed me a spinny loop, see that? You'll catch just a thin edge, or you'll get eaten by the spin entirely, the ball flying off. Why? Because the ball is very spinny and you cannot directly engage it head-on. You can't fight the spin head-on, the rubber simply slips. So how do we cancel the opponent's rotation and add our own? Simple. When a heavy topspin ball rolls forward like this, if you try to grind against it with opposing spin, the rubber can't handle it. It slips, catches a thin edge, or clips half the ball. So what's the correct path? How do I cancel the spin? I can start with a tiny collision, just a little bit. Then instead of fricting straight forward against the spin, I friction sideways to the right outward. This cancels the incoming rotation and I can still create my own spin on top of it. Let me demonstrate. Feed me a heavy loop. See, my racket face is quite open, that's fine, no problem.
我版面很亮没关系的啊，版面很亮没关系。首先教你们，因为我们不拉手了，对吧？我们拉手已经很落后了。来，你发2个连续筷子，你看我拉手，来不及的，对吧？那有的朋友说，哎，孙坚，我听了你的课，
Some players say, I tried ripping in front, but I can't generate power. Watch, no power, right? That's because you're missing one thing, your non-playing hand. Remember, the left hand is extremely important in the backhand system, whether you're driving, blocking, or ripping. Now we keep the backswing small because the bigger the backswing, the less stability. So without using a big arm swing, how do you add quality? At the moment you rip, body pushes forward, forearm goes right. Your left hand simultaneously pulls the opposite direction, like tearing a piece of cloth. Both hands pull apart at the same time, with your core as the center point. You're stretching outward from the middle of your body in both directions. This way the force doubles, you recover the same power as a full backswing with waist rotation. But instead of one big shot, you can play continuously. Feed me some quick ones. Watch my left hand. Both hands go out together, break together, release together, break together, reset together. This is a beautiful body rhythm. Clearly, it's not the hand circling. The hand simply goes forward and to the right. The circular look is a visual illusion created by the body's reset motion. Look for drives and rips, I'm in this position. For looping, step back half a step, widen your stance, lower your center of gravity. The backswing can involve slightly more rotation from the waist and hips. But remember, looping does not mean pulling your hand back. Control your hand, don't use the arm to backswing or generate power. Looping uses the whole framework, legs, waist. 去引拍，不要靠手去引拍，不要靠手去发力。拉球呢，只是同框架把整体的框架是什么？腿、腰、腿、腰。Legs, waist, hands, 3 elements combined. Just slightly enlarge all 3 and it becomes a loop. Same framework. Now here's a crucial step. With the loop, if you use pure friction, you can't find the contact point. Watch, pure friction leads to thin edges and slipping. So what do you add? It's the combination of drive and rip, hit first then friction. I collide with the ball first, and at that moment I add the friction. Let me demonstrate backswing, collide, then rub. These two combine, collide rub, collide rub. If you still can't find that collision feeling, it's simple. Have your training partner or coach feed you a half-high ball.
顶磨，顶磨，对。那么这个时候，很多朋友他还是找不到顶的感觉，对吧？那么很简单，一样的，你让你的这个球友也好，教练也好，给你发个这种小半高，哎，很明确。
Stand back, let the ball bounce high, 1, 2, 3, peak. Then as it drops to the early descending phase, punch the ball first. Find that collision feeling.
弹这个球，把这个球顶实，找到这种感觉。对，找到这种感觉。
This solves the problem of stepping back half a step to loop and not finding the contact point. Many of you want to loop but skip the earlier part and go straight into brushing, so you can't find the point. The block is equivalent to catching the ball first, then looping. If you skip the block and loop directly, you're fighting the ball without receiving it first. Your success rate drops significantly. But if you catch it first, then loop, you'll hit 8 or 9 out of 10. Block first, then loop. Drive them to both sides.
那么，你如果说有接再拉，基本上8、9不太离实啊。你看，我接入再拉，不会丢的啊。你看，对吧？我接入再拉，那么也就是说我顶住再拉。你看啊，我先顶住再拉，对吧？顶住再拉，对，顶住再拉，对，引开啊，往两边走，顶住是吧？顶住再拉，顶住再拉，顶住再拉。